Yeah. So yeah, I have had quite a few actually recently. Yeah, so the one of them it was everything was great. Like there was no issues. There were kids involved. Teenage kids, but yeah, no issues. They were able to get everything sorted out before they had me in there. That's not always the case, but most of my clients are at that stage. I did have one client that didn't have that all figured out, and they were trying to figure out, well, can I still buy? And then maybe not disclose that I'm separating. And, but I know that's considered more like a mortgage fraud because you do need to disclose that information. So I did tell them, please seek legal advice. This isn't just as simple as you telling your lender like, oh no, I'm single, there's definitely ways of finding out. The bank can find out that you're not in fact single and you're separating. And, so I think, yeah. And I know there's probably a process that you go through on that side of it too, to discover like, hey, this person's not in fact single. They were married before, or, so, yeah. But I mean, overall, I would say it's, yeah, it's been pretty emotional. There's always the emotional side because it's always the one spouse has something to say about the other, and it's just a little bit, sometimes it's a lot, like where it's like, okay, well, you got to take the kids, and you're taking the dogs, and sometimes it turns into a huge argument. And I've really try to get them back together and be like, okay, let's calm down, let's get this figured out. Like we're both working on the same goal. The goal is to sell your home so you can move on. So you're not stuck in a situation where you're fighting about who's going to take care of the dishes and who's going to take the kids out while there's showings. So I think it's so important to have that communication, and I've been very successful with it. I have to say, I haven't had any situations where the one spouse doesn't talk to me. They always know that I'm working for both of them. I don't just work for the wife, or not, I'm not just working for the husband. I'm there for both of them, and they know that. So, yeah.
And that's, yeah, thank you. And the same with me. I can't work for both clients sometimes because of the conflict of interest on it, but very open with the conversation of the clients that I'm working with. And if both of them come to me, I do have colleagues that I refer them to so that I'm not into both of their financial situations. But just the openness of how they're going to structure the debt, how are they going to support each other, and just trying to keep that calm mind, and just being confident and calm and really considerate of each other's feelings as well as, the kids, is where the key to the success is. And when we look at it, when someone comes to me to get a new mortgage or a restructure on their mortgage, if be honest up front, as you're saying, because we will discover that, you're not single. And
Mhm.
that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing to be ashamed of, but it really helps structure the deal, especially if you come forward and say, you know what, yes, I was married, but we're just in the process of splitting up and separating and dividing all of our assets and everything. I haven't got a separation agreement at this point, but here's what we've talked about verbally.
Mhm.
That's where I say to the client, that's great. I'm so happy that you're talking, but you don't want it to be verbally. You need to go and talk to a lawyer as well and get legal
Mhm.
advice on this so that it's in writing, so that when we look at doing a new mortgage for you, everything is set in writing for you to protect yourself as well as your ex that's moving on. Like there's nothing worse than me going and pulling a credit bureau after having a conversation with someone and finding all of these joint debts and then having to go back and have a whole different conversation, because
Mhm.
I may have already worked out the numbers and said, you know what, this is great. Yes, you can go and buy a $500,000, new condo.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden I've pulled all these debts and everything that they're jointly responsible on that I have to pull in. And now you can't afford anything. And that's
Mhm.
so disheartening for
Mhm.
everybody involved. So again, it comes back to, like you and I have always said, John, it comes back to that communication and being upfront. And, working together makes it palatable for everybody, but it also makes it way less stress when we're all working together.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, so that's what I would say as well with when it comes to marital breakdowns and things like that. So it's not just, when you're in these breakdowns where relationships, marital, however it looks, it's not just about separating your finances. It's about rebuilding them again. And that
Mhm.
rebuilding of your finances does come into your home ownership as well. With building the right structure for yourself and supporting, you can move forward much stronger. You can be more confident and you can be in control of your future. And just making sure you've got your right partners working together with you, like Shauna and myself, we work close together and we work on behalf of our clients. And the stronger your team is that you've got around you, the more confident and successful you are going forward. And yes, Sean and I are two pieces and very important pieces to any of these decisions that we're making financially in home ownership. But we also we have a whole network and a whole team around ourselves that we work with that are lawyers and accountants and things like that, that all fall into place of what you need, whether you're in a marital breakdown, separation, or if you're just starting out or looking to downsize, upsize, those are all key important players that you want the full team supporting you together. Shauna, what do
Absolutely.
you have to add to that?
Yeah, I'm happy you brought that up because I think of like some of my clients I've had in the past, like single moms, now they're like, okay, well, there's some work that needs to be done around their house and they need a handyman because, they're no longer with their spouse. And, they find it a little bit more challenging in that way. And when you're talking about upsizing, downsizing, I do work with a team as well. Like I'll have somebody that can help with packing, with moving. So I have a team that can navigate, help my clients in that way. And I think it's so important to have that network of people that you can recommend. You can say, I can vouch for this person. They're great. Give them a call. They'll be able to help you. So,
Yeah, and I'm very glad you brought that up because that is so true. And when I talk, I immediately think about like our lawyers and our notaries and our accountants and
mhm,
things like that when you're doing this. But it's so true. Like when I think of spanning out of everybody that we work with, having those right people that are going to come in and help you with downsizing or help you with packing. A lot of times when you're downsizing, everything is so sentimental for you that it's hard sometimes to get rid of. And a lot of times, some of the companies that I work with, when it comes to downsizing, they will actually go in, they will go through your home. An example is I just did an estate sale for someone that I worked with my realtor with. And like Shauna, with this too, when it comes to the estate sales, what we do is we bring in a company that will actually go into the home and they will take everything that you don't want to take with you.
mhm.
They're going to work with an auction house and they're going to sell all that for you. And they're going to get rid of, the stuff that can't sell. And that is so important. And that's where, like working with Shauna and myself, we have that team that will come in and support you as well. So, so important.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to interject, ladies, too. How do you deal with couples now they've separated and they're having to move into a home that's not desirable? Say they're used to living in a single family detached and they've separated and now they have to move into something that's less desirable, into a space that they're not used to. Like, can you provide any advice for those people that are having to separate into a different type of living environment that they no longer feel is acceptable for themselves? Say they have children. It's different if they're single adults, but if they're a family with children, how do you mitigate people's expectations around moving into something that they wouldn't deem as acceptable compared to what they've lived in before?
Yeah, I can speak to that. I had a client, like he was in a beautiful 4,000 something square feet home. Actually, I want to say it was close to 5,000 square foot home. A lot of the space I didn't really use, but he had to really downsize. Like he had to go into a smaller townhouse, a two-bedroom townhouse is what he ended up buying. And the reality for him was he's like, I'm gonna end up spending the same in rent as I would if I buy a townhouse, this like older townhouse. And he's like, I don't want to be paying rent. And that's what it boiled down to for him. And even though he was so used to being in this big space and now he's going into such a tiny little space, he was like, this is all I can afford. This is my budget. I would rather put money towards my equity versus paying rent, which works out about the same for him. The payments would have been about the same. So that's what I found, but that doesn't apply to everybody. Some people are like, forget it, I'm just gonna rent till I have enough money. The problem with that is that you could be waiting and waiting and you could end up getting priced out of the market. So that's a risk you run with that. So you're better off getting into something small. It might not be ideal. Maybe you'll need a storage locker for those extra things that you have that, might not have space for. But getting into something is better than renting and being out of the market because we don't know when property values are going to go up. There's no way for us to predict that. I wish we knew that. If I knew that, I would have been a millionaire, So, I mean, the reality is yeah, we just don't know. We don't know when the values are going to go up. So it's better to be in the market, even if it's not the perfect home right now. The goal is to work towards getting into something, upgrading in the future, which should be the goal. So, but for everybody, it's different. So.